Hi everyone, Agnes here. I have got an interview for you today, and it is with Amy. And welcome, Amy, to the Zoom call.
Hi everybody. Thanks, Agnes, for having me.
Yes, and we decided to get you on here because you have had some really wonderful things happen and to share results and things. And I thought it's so good of hearing people where they were and where they're at and what they did in between, you know, whether it was self-love or living in the end, Neville's work or whoever, because there's so many different ways of going around the circle. So can you start off, take us back to where you want to start before you had what you wanted, what you did, and then what you manifested? Go for it.
Yeah, so I decided to do this interview because I have to say that the success stories that I could see on your channel really did give me hope when I thought there wasn't any.
Yeah.
And my story starts about, I would say, about 4 years ago. I mean, prior to this, I mean, I've been married and divorced, and I was single for about a year, which wasn't long enough in hindsight. And then,
Amy, before you keep going, I forgot to ask. I mean, I know where you are, but let people know where you are in the world.
Oh yes, I am from the UK.
Yep.
So yes, and Agnes is in the UK at the moment.
Yeah.
So we thought we're on the same time zone.
Let's do it now.
So let's do it now.
Yes.
So yeah, it started off about 4 years ago, and the relationship that I had following my divorce, I mean, I could have sworn that I was confident enough, that I was worthy, and you know, I really did go into this relationship feeling quite cocky. And it didn't take long for cracks to show, and you know, I would find myself checking my phone quite a lot and thinking, you know, why is he texting me? And we sort of bumbled along like this for a good few months, and you know, there would be times where there was, you know, some sort of commitment, but then that wasn't enough for me. And long story short, in those, I would say, 10 months we were together, it ended. And when I say it ended badly, it ended terribly. I mean, that from where I was standing, there was absolutely no chance that this man is ever going to speak to me again after how I've acted.
Yeah.
And you know, in all seriousness, it did send me down a real black hole. I hadn't really processed my divorce either, so that was coming up as well as this breakup. And you know, I was in a really bad place. And I discovered law of attraction, traditional law of attraction. Never heard of it before, and you know, I was very skeptical, but I thought, well, you know, my back's against a wall here. I don't know what else to do, so I might as well just try it. And I did, and I get little successes, and my confidence grew. And I discovered Neville Goddard, and I would say within about 6 weeks it worked. And you know, I'd go to sleep and feeling the wish fulfilled, and it did work. And he got in contact with me, and we got back together again. But we went through exactly the same pattern of the anxiety was still there. In fact, it was probably worse than it was before. The anxiety was still there. I was still not confident in myself. I'd done zero work on my internal world. And, you know, like I say, we went through exactly the same pattern, lasted again about 9 months, ended terribly, and I was back at square one. So I kind of did the same thing, but I'd started doing a lot more self-love. And I think at that point is when I emailed you for some supportive advice, and you sort of sent me a voice note back with what to do with self-love meditations. So I really dove into those. I mean, I was doing it all the time. You know, I'd go into meditation and do it. I'd do it while I was in the car, while I was driving, while I was out walking. And I'd say all these things like, I am loved, I am worthy. And again, I saw the outside change. And again, within a few weeks, he was back. But again, the same thing happened. And, you know, and looking back, I can see clearly why the reason was. And the reason was because I was doing all these self-love meditations, but I was doing it to get him. And I was making it so conditional. And, you know, so what would happen is I would have him back and then I'd get sucked back in again, and you know, the need would start again, and you know, I'd make him responsible for meeting every single need that I'd got. And I mean, energetically, that must have been quite exhausting for him.
Yeah.
So again, we bumbled along and bumbled along. And then we had quite a big breakup, and this one lasted 6 months. So we're talking sort of, I would say, 3 years into all of this. And
Amy,
I promise you that this...
did you just slide back into, like, I'm not getting enough, I want more? Like, what was the thing that caused that breakup at the end? Was it the same, the neediness would come up and you drop the self-love?
Exactly, yes. So I'd drop the self-love, and then I'd have quite a lot of fear would come up, like fear of abandonment, because I've been divorced before. But then I'd start treating him like somebody that was going to leave me.
Yes.
So I could never really, it was like this sort of push-pull going on all the time, where I pull him closer because I was afraid of losing him. But then I push him away at the same time because I was frightened of commitment. But then I'd call him a commitment phobe, which is quite a convenient label. So yeah, it just got to the point where it just was not working, and you know, I was exhausted. I was trying to force things into place, and it wasn't happening. And around, it was when COVID first hit. Actually, we went into lockdown. We split up, and I'd made a commitment to myself, like, right, I've got some serious stuff going on here, and I'm going to take this time to look at it. He's not going anywhere. He's in lockdown. I'm not going anywhere. So
that's true.
So I might as so those 6 months to really get to grips with what this is all about. And it is, what I've come to realize is, it isn't about having the things that I thought I wanted. It was about sort of peeling away the things that weren't true about me, and going in and healing past wounds that had brought me to where I was today. And you know, that 6 months, although it was incredibly painful, an awful lot of transformation happened in those 6 months. I'd done a lot of sort of inner child work, and you know, I'd sat with a lot of feelings that came up, and you know, I did a lot of meditation, I did a lot of yoga, but this time not to get something. This time it was to sort of know myself better, and know what was going on. And you know, I didn't have any idea of, you know, that it was actually me that was the commitment phobe. You know, and looking into the reasons why that would be, and looking into my childhood, and you know, and really looking at how I talk to myself on a daily basis, and you know, realizing also that, you know, the things that were coming up for a reason. And I started to understand that I'm exactly where I need to be right now. And again, 6 months went by, and this time I got in touch with him.
What year are we in now? Like, when you
we
went
are in 2022. We're in 22 now, so I would say 2020. I would say 2020. Yeah. So we went
2020 when yeah.
So we went into lockdown in the April, and we were back in touch again by the September-ish time.
Okay.
And we got back together, and this time it was different because I'd done this work to myself, and because I'd really looked at and radically taken responsibility, even though, you know, it was how I was interpreting it was like, oh, it's all his fault. He's this, he's that, he's dismissive and avoidant. He's a commitment phobe. I'm perfect. And why isn't this working? But I'd radically taken responsibility for what my actions were, and you know, I dealt with a lot of guilt and regret as well over how I'd acted. So we started again, and we were going really well. Yes, we'd had a lot of conflict, but nothing that wasn't resolvable. And we went on well for a good 18 months. And we got to a point, I would say in March this year, where we were about to move in together. And then we had a huge blowout, and it ended again. And this time was the first time that it was actually a mutual ending. I mean, I was pretty certain in March, I don't want to be with this person anymore. This isn't working. I deserve more than what's here, and I'm going to move on. And that's the first time I'd actually thought that, okay, I'm going to move on from this, because it's just, maybe it's just not for me. Maybe he's just not the person for me. And around that time, I discovered attachment styles and looked at what different attachment styles are, and what their what sort of beliefs and what traumas there are for each attachment style. And I'd looked, and I'd really sort of dug deep in myself, and accepted that it was a difference in attachment styles, basically, and that it was me. And me as an anxious, preoccupied person, and him as a dismissive, avoidant person. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those, but it meant that we couldn't fully communicate with each other in a way that each other could understand. And so I'd sort of learned, how I was expecting him to be like me, and because he wasn't, I was so quick to put him in the wrong. I'd also realized that I'd gone through life pretty boundaryless. I didn't have any boundaries at all. And I'd also disrespect his boundaries as well. And, because I felt, it was okay for me to, you to overstep mine. So I'm going to overstep yours. I've learned about subconscious needs, and how I would make him responsible and have the underlying belief that he is the only person that can meet my needs. And when I realized that, actually he's not responsible for that, I am. And, it's really empowering to think in that way, that I can meet any need myself. And, it's sort of all the dots seem to be joining together. And there was a lot of light bulb moments where I'd think, oh, okay, that's why I acted like that. And it was a traumatized part of me that was coming up that needed healing. So we were apart for, I would say 6 weeks. It wasn't long at all before we were back together. And but this time I went back with the attitude of, okay, there isn't anything that we can go through that can't be resolved with a conversation. I mean, I used to be quite a passive aggressive person, and if somebody ticked me off, I would let them know, but I wouldn't say it.
Yes.
I'd let them know, and I'd give the silent treatment, or I'd go like huff at somebody or whatever. But now I don't, and now I'd say, I say it in a way that isn't, this banshee, like, I can't believe you've just done that. And I say it, and we converse, and it's resolved quickly. And there isn't sort of this week-long awful period where neither of you are really speaking to each other properly. So our style of handling conflicts definitely changed. And I used to think that conflict was bad, that I should stay away from it. And in fairness, that was what my experience of conflict was, that everybody would shout. But now it's just so much easier and so much more relaxing being able to talk about the issue rather than scream it at somebody. Because they're not going to listen.
No. That's right.
And I think when we had split up, I mean, I had a coaching call with you, and I remember you saying to me, you might not be physically sucking him dry with the neediness, but energetically you are. And I thought, you're right, you are. So you called me out, and I thought, yes, that is absolutely right. Energetically, I have got my foot on his neck. And looking back, I can completely see how. So now we're back together. He's moving in with me. He's put his house up for sale, which is a huge thing. And he's coming to live here with me and my son. And the relationship is like night and day. It's
Wow.
just completely transformed. And I've learned now that if you're taking care of yourself and you're taking care of your own needs, and you are becoming the best version of yourself that you can be for you, not
For
for
you.
anybody else, the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah.
I'd meditate and live in the end, but that wasn't, it was sort of like 80% me, 20% living in the end.
Yes.
So
yes.
yeah, it used to be 100% living in the end, because I didn't want to really look at what else was going on. And I just wanted what I wanted as soon as I could.
Yes.
I just want my stuff. And it's the journey that I've been on. Yes, it's been painful, and yes, it's been long. It has been, but the gems that I've got from it and what I've learned from it is absolutely priceless, because it sort of seeps into other areas of your life as well, and things start happening that weren't possible before. And I would have never
Amy,
done this.
did he notice like a really big change in you, like because you stopped doing all that stuff? Like, did he just go, what the hell's happened to you, like in a good way?
No, he didn't. I could tell sometimes when there was sort of conflict afoot. He'd sort of like, oh, she's gonna scream.
She's gonna start.
She's gonna start. It's gonna be horrible. But when it's sort of that's sort of gone away now. But I could tell there was nerves there.
Yeah.
And it was almost like he was sort of sat there thinking, oh, thank gosh, she's just he hasn't had a go. And it took him a good few weeks to get used to that as well, because he'd been so used to me being so awkward all the time, and wanting things that are my way and my way only, and not really taking into account what his needs were as well. And I've learned that in a relationship there's room for everybody, and there's room for everybody's needs. And I was sort of quite selfish in that, well, his needs don't, and I would never say it to him, but I would think well, his needs don't really matter as much as mine.
I know. And I think that women, we do that because we get consumed with our emotion. I remember my partner saying, oh, it's all about you again.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, well, I'm the one that's upset. But it was like, what he was saying was, there's never any room for me. When you're in the middle of your stuff, when do I get heard? But I had the same thoughts as you. I know my stuff's more important. Not that it was conscious, but I wasn't listening to him. I wasn't listening.
No. And when he used to sort of go out, I mean, I've never been sort of jealous of him going out. I've never been afraid of anything happening while he'd gone out with his friends, but I'd always feel like I wasn't being prioritized. And it wasn't that. He just wanted to go out with his mates.
That's it.
Just the same as I do,
just like I do
when he did it. And there was a lot of double standards.
I know.
I let myself off the hook for such a lot, but I wouldn't do that with him. No.
Wow, what a transformation. I mean, this work is such a slap in the face when you first look at your behavior and the things you think and the things you don't consider about like someone else's feelings and all this stuff. You realize, oh my goodness, I'm actually ashamed of my own self, like how I'm still, like I'm an adult in an adult body, but I'm still been acting like a 8-year-old.
Oh yeah.
It's quite
I did. I acted like a spoiled brat.
Me too. I get it.
And there was a point where I started judging him for staying with me. Anymore, because now I can look at myself in a really endearing way and think, it was a trauma response. It was a trauma response. And it wasn't even like at the time I felt like I had any control over it. But you learn and you grow. And I was sort of had to get myself out of this mindset of not lifting a finger as well.
Yeah.
You know, and expecting something to drop out the sky,
Yeah.
you know, without having to do any work on myself. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a long road, but it's so been worth it.
You've
Yeah.
done it in quite a short amount of time, really.
I
It probably
think
doesn't feel like it, but because you
it
had
doesn't,
lots of
because
stops and starts.
exactly, and I think particularly the first, say, 2.5 years, I didn't do any self work at all. I was still expecting he's gonna change to what I want him to,
Yeah.
and it's just gonna be him showing up how I want him to, because you know, that's just how things go. And yeah, it was, like you say, it is a slap in the face.
It is.
And
You know
and
what's interesting? Like, because we're listening to your story and your side, and he was getting that old version of you in front of him at the time. So you go, okay, well, the thought that comes to my mind is, because everyone as you pushed out, what did he start to project differently that he wanted in a relationship, that this came up in you, that you transformed?
well, what I noticed that was really interesting is when I started healing my fear of abandonment, he started healing his fear of commitment. And because that, I suppose that was really the root of what the problem was. I would trigger his fear and he would trigger mine, and we would mirror each other until it just blew up.
Yeah.
And neither of us knew how to resolve it, and it seemed impossible to resolve it. And you know, I was angry because he didn't want to live with me at the time, and you know, he was afraid of committing to me, thinking, well, you know how you are, you might switch one day and kick me out because you're so unpredictable.
Yes. That's fair enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, on both sides it felt really unsafe, although we both, you know, deeply loved each other. We still do. We both deeply love each other.
Yeah.
But it was the fear that was that. I mean, sometimes it would get to the point where I don't even know if I can live with him because I'm that frightened of him leaving me.
Yes.
So when I started healing that, and you know, feeling worthy of having a loving, committed relationship, and you know, knowing that really I am capable of living with somebody, and I am capable of, you know, having somebody in my home that I can share my life with, his fear of commitment then started to heal as well. And he was sort of coming up with light bulb moments as well, where he knows where it came from. And you know, he, even though he doesn't know any of this, he only knows what I've told him, because I did a course on integrated attachment theory in the summer. So he knows a lot of that because I've been speaking a lot about it. And, you know, it has encouraged him to sort of do some introspection as well.
Yeah.
Which is really nice, because I mean, I wouldn't have mentioned that to him before, because I think, oh, he's just going to say it's nonsense. But it's, you know, it's really turned out for the best, because he now understands me and I understand him a little bit better as well.
Yes.
And I can't remember where I read this, but there was a quote that I read as well that said, stop trying to love the other person more and start understanding them, because it is you. And you know, when you understand each other, and when you can get through these difficult times, you're sort of invited into a real deeper level of love and intimacy, which is really what you want. It's, you know, like I say, it's completely transformed what I think about relationships. I feel safe in relationships now. It's improved relationships with friends and family, and improved my relationship with me. You know, I like myself now. I didn't before. I know that I'm worthy of good things, whereas I didn't. I'd always on the surface say, yeah, of course I know I'm worthy. I would never admit to myself what was really going on.
And it's so much easier to go, oh, he's not doing this and he's not doing that. Why is he doing this? And he doesn't give enough and he doesn't take me seriously. While you're doing all the he's not, he is, you miss all the stuff that you are not looking about your own self, like fear of abandonment, fear of loss, anxiety, insecurity, neediness, that you're trying to control everything because you've got such a fear of things getting out of control, all these things. But while you're focusing on them and the relationship and the dissatisfaction of it, you miss all this stuff about you.
You do. And a good thing that I started doing, just a tip, was take "they should" out of your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Because that is a surefire way of getting yourself into a state of resentment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would hear myself in my mind saying, he should be this, he should do this, he's this, he should, they should, everybody else should be doing something. And, once I stopped doing that, and I thought, well, okay, then leave them alone.
Yes.
And leave them alone and go inward and, look at why you think everybody should be singing to your hymn sheets.
I know.
And,
You just go,
and what I should be doing.
It's profound, isn't it? It's like looking at something from a totally different angle. And it's like, once you do, you go, I can't even believe that I was thinking that. Like, I can't even believe that I really believed that while I was standing over there. I really believed what I was thinking about he should.
Yeah.
It's profound.
And I think as women, we're very conditioned that way.
Yes.
And we're conditioned to be, put your foot down. And, and that's what I was. And it was, it was, I can see how that happened. And I can see why I thought that way. But I never sort of looked at what it would be like for being on the receiving end of that.
Correct.
And I think because the manifestation community, again, it's don't lift a finger, or they literally are your thoughts. It sort of takes away from understanding how that other person might feel.
Exactly.
And like I say, through this journey, it hasn't been an easy one. I mean, I've had to forgive people that I didn't want to forgive, and myself. And really look at some really painful memories and experiences that I've had, and let them go. And it's things that I didn't really want to let go, because that was me, and these were my thoughts, and this is my belief. And you've really got to get used to letting that stuff go. It's in your benefit.
It is.
Everything's in your benefit.
I think letting go and surrender are two highly underused ways of being. They really have been life-changing for me. Like the self-love, yes, and all of that, but self-love, surrender, and letting go, and just letting people be who they are, where they're at. It doesn't mean you can't imagine things for you and them together and all of that, but that you live and let live.
And I think when you get to that point, when you are imagining these things, they're coming from a very pure place, where it isn't, I need to do this because that's going to make me feel wanted. It's more of, I feel wanted, and wouldn't it be nice that if this happened?
Yes.
And it's looking at it the other way around.
Wow. And I do think, when people don't do this work, you will hear out there in the world, he's not right for you. He should be doing this. You need to get rid of him. Get someone who puts in more effort. Or, it's like there's always these conversations that traditionally women have about them, the men over there. And I think that comes from our mothers and our grandmothers' generation. And then we have taken on doing it with our friends. And, I remember my partner saying to me, "You're not for me, you're not for me." And I remember one day getting angry and saying, "Why do you always say that?" And he said, "I'm going to tell you why." And it was because he said, every time something goes on between you and me, you run off and go and tell somebody about our stuff. He said, it's meant to be between you and me, not between you and you running off to your friends. He said, you're exposing my business to people I don't even know.
Mm.
Because they were in another country, obviously. And he said, you know, I don't share my stuff with you with people. He said, I sit and I ponder and I pray and I think about it and I think, how can I correct this? And said, then we come back together. But he said, you running off like that, he said, that's why I used to say to you, you're not for me, because he said you couldn't keep our stuff to us. And I thought,
I've done that. I've done that before as well with friends. And, you know, when I sat back and thought about that as well, I noticed that it was, you know, a codependency coming out, that because I couldn't do it with it, like I'd leech on other people.
Yes.
Instead, just to get the relief that I wanted, instead of just, like you say, sitting with it and understanding what's going on.
Yes. And then
and
working
how can you
through
solve
it.
for it.
Yeah. Because when you do that, it's like you're looking for reassurance from friends of how to sort something out because you haven't worked out how to do it yourself. And sometimes,
and they know nothing about it.
Well, and also sometimes you're asking people that don't have good relationships themselves. So you're asking people that really give you free advice, but bad advice because they haven't themselves worked out how to do it.
Exactly. And they're projecting onto you as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're projecting your issues onto them, but they're also projecting their issues onto you.
That's it.
And, you know, it's when you realize this, that it doesn't make any sense to go and talk to you know, to go and moan about it, does it?
No, because you're living in the problem of it. You're not activating a solution, you know? I mean, a good friend would be, Amy, a good friend would say to you, oh, you're going through that. So what have you got going on your side of it that happened to you? Instead of going, oh, he, it's like the friend would turn and say, well, what are you doing? That would be a good friend.
Exactly. And I think given that it took so long for me to come to that, to come to that knowledge, because I'd always knew obviously that everyone's you push that, but I never really looked at what that meant. You know, and it's interesting when you see you can actually witness yourself doing it and witness yourself projecting onto that other person, because, you know, I have a son, he's 7, and I project a lot of my fear onto him. So, oh no, don't do that, it's not safe. You know, when it is. But yeah, it's been a good journey, painful but good. And you know, I would recommend it to anybody. I know at first when you start out with this, when somebody's saying, oh, you need to look at yourself, it's so unsatisfying, and you think, well, I don't want to look at me, and I'll look at everybody else instead. But it is the only way forward. And you know, my mental health improved, me self-confidence is skyrocketed. My emotional health and how I feel, like, you know, anxiety that I used to have, it still comes up, but I don't panic anymore, and I don't react to it so much. And so really, like I say, throughout life and how I feel generally and who I am as a person, I'm a much nicer person than I used to be. So yeah, it's really, really eye-opening, and there's still a lot for me to learn, and you know, I'll keep growing and I'll continue to grow. And it's just that when I'm triggered now, I don't go into a friend's ear of, oh, you know, how do I start, what's going on, or you know, how do I make this go away, make this thing disappear. And it's just really transformed everything.
So great. And you have now gone on, I'm going to say this bit because this is the benefit and the overflow. You've now gone on, you are on TikTok, you've started YouTube, and you've got your own business, and you are starting to coach other people now that you have really understood the importance of this. So do you want to say a few words about about that? Like, would that just come out of it naturally because you enjoyed the work so much?
It did, and it really came out when I learned about attachment styles, and I'd done a qualification in that now.
Yeah.
So I sort of specialize in attachment styles and how to heal your attachment style from insecure to secure and confident.
Yeah.
In healing childhood wounds,
Yeah.
limiting beliefs, and ways to reprogram behaviors as well, which will, as you know, it'll definitely increase your chances of having a relationship that you want and that you deserve.
Yeah.
So I do coaching sessions on that. I do email coaching as well, and
Nice.
there's lots of information on my website, which is
Great.
amyjonescoaching.co.uk. I've got a blog as well if you want to read it, for
Excellent.
some hints and tips. But yes, loads of free content. But like I say, I would love to help anybody that's in this situation. I've been there and I've done it, and there's never any judgment.
Yeah. And you're still doing it. That's what's great, is I think it's going to people that are still not only working on their own stuff, but they're in relationship, and it's not that they've just manifested an ex-back or a specific person. They're actually still in that relationship. And that, I think, the person's walking that journey consistently, just like you are. So I think that's really helpful. I'm going to put down below your website, your blog, and anything else that you mentioned for people to go and find you, Amy, after this gets uploaded. So do you want to say any last words about anything before we say goodbye? Anything come to mind?
I would say that the best way to increase your own self-confidence is to make the commitment to start questioning what you think. Because when I started doing that, even if it's just is that true, you don't have to flip it. Just question the truth of it, and you'll see yourself the evidence that says that that's not true. And that, I would say, is a very, very good starting point if you're just starting out with this kind of thing, because it can be quite overwhelming, can't it? And
it can, especially these days on YouTube or other platforms, because there's more and more and more people hopping on with more and more information. So for people, I mean, when I started, there was only books, so it was easy. You'd go to the bookshop and pick the book you wanted, and then you'd get a highlighter and you'd highlight it. Whereas now there's so much stuff coming at you as soon as you do a little search on anything in particular. So I think it is harder. So I think my last words would be, go to somebody that has manifested what you want, and that has got some experience in the particular topic that you want. Today we're talking about SPs, and we're talking about relationships. So I do think that really, really helps. And I'm glad to hear that you are in it, doing it, and continuing it, Amy. That's fabulous. I'm so thrilled. I'm just so thrilled. And it's funny. It's, what cracks me up is when people come back and say, oh yeah, I did a coaching session and you really confronted me on that, or you said this and then I ran away. Because I forget what we talk about sometimes, and then it always boomerangs back. Oh yeah, you said that to me, and it was like, oh, So, but I had people do the same to me. It's like they didn't let me get away with stuff, and it's so good to have someone that gives you a little boot up the backside in a gentle way. That's saying, hey, it's not him, it's you. So. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining us. Amy, you stay on and we'll say bye in private, and hope you enjoyed the interview, everyone, and everything's down below in the description as per usual. And I will see you in the next interview or in the next YouTube. Bye, everyone.
Bye.